I didn't have conscience then. At this moment, yeah. But at that moment, at the age of 15, I didn't give a...
On May 12, 1992, 15-year-old Jackie Montanez walked out of a bail hearing with a gun in her bag and a face burned into her memory. That night, the man who killed her friend was dead, and Jackie had pulled the trigger. These are female gang members who flipped out at disrespectful interviews.
They call me sour, the opposite of sweet. Shanking, steaming, robbing, I did it all, rolling with the man them.
2014. Tracy Miller does something most people in her situation would never do. She told the whole truth. Her memoir, Sour, hit the shelves that summer. But it wasn't just a book, it was a reckoning. For the first time, Tracy sat down and walked the world through everything she had lived through. The things she had done, the violence, the fear, the remorse, and the grief. But also the quiet things no one ever asked about, like what it felt like to grow up scared in your own home, what it meant to join a gang, carry a knife, and try to feel less powerless. Tracy grew up in Rappel Park, UK, just down the road from the glossy New Brixton coffee shops and artisan markets, but might as well been a different universe. Back then, it was a place where sirens never stopped, and most kids learned early not to expect much from the world. Her dad was locked up, facing life for a horrific crime. Her mom, struggling with bipolar disorder, was either asleep, medicated, or unreachable in a way that only a girl from that kind of home would understand. Tracy was the oldest of 4, and when something terrible happened, when she overheard that a man in their house had touched someone close to her, she didn't tell anyone. She knew nobody at home would protect her or her siblings, so she did what felt like protection. She slid a knife under her pillow. Not long after, she would bring that knife to school, not for show nor status, but because her world had shrunk down to anger and hopelessness. It became worse when her mom had an episode in front of a friend. That friend went back to school and told everyone, and Tracy, already humiliated, already caring more than any kid should, snapped. She tried to stab her, and she meant it. Fortunately, her classmates stopped her in time, but her life changed that day. Not because of what she just did, but because of what it confirmed, that she was violent, dangerous, and nothing like others her age. And once the world sees you that way, it's hard not to become it. And well, Tracy soon embraced it. She was expelled from school, and her next school didn't give her a clean slate. They already knew her violent record, and so Tracy leaned into the reputation. She became what they expected. She joined a gang.
Being in a gang is like having your own little family. People that understand you.
And just like that, Tracy becomes the only girl amongst boys. She sleeps beside a gun, robs stores, and Sour became her nickname. Not because she was bitter, but because sweetness didn't survive long where she lived.
At the time, I had no remorse. Didn't care about what I was doing.
And yet, even then, Tracy had her own code. During an interview with the Daily Mail, she said that gangs nowadays are just out of control. But in the past, they had rules. They didn't mug women, didn't target people who couldn't afford it, just businesses. That was the line. In her own words, she said,
"We'd go into a business, try and get the cash, and then get out as quick as we could with no violence. Now, kids have taken it to a whole new level, with initiations."
It wasn't good, but it made sense to her then. There was adrenaline, power, and a strange kind of order. But it never lasted.
And I just needed that adrenaline rush on a daily basis, so we'd meet up and decide what criminal acts we would go and perform. Little did they know, I wasn't doing it for the money side, I was doing it for the adrenaline rush.
1995. The Brixton riots take place after a death of a young black man in police custody. The riots went violent quickly, and Tracy was caught in the crowd when a man with a sawn-off shotgun opened fire. She dove under a car, but not fast enough. Pain tore through her leg, searing, all-consuming. She was shot and collapsed. She survived, but it stayed with her. The metal is still in her body today. The shooting, a toxic relationship, and an overdose became the breaking point. And then she got pregnant. Something about that changed everything. It made her stop, look around, and rethink her life choices. Motherhood didn't fix her pain.
I took that really serious. I promised myself that if I was going to be a mum, there's no way my child was going to live the lifestyle that I live.
but it did give her something to fight for that wasn't just survival. Now, decades later, Tracy isn't hiding from her past anymore, but she's not living in it either. She's a mentor now, a speaker, and a mother. She tells her story to kids in schools and youth offender units, not to scare them, but to show them that the choices matter, even when it feels like you don't have any. She says,
I don't want sympathy. This is a story that I felt needed to be told. This is to convince other youngsters to come out and tell their story, or to convince them to change their paths.
There's a moment in her book, Sour, where Tracy writes,
I was born bad.
but when you listen to her now, steady, thoughtful, and deeply honest, it's clear that's not the whole story. Maybe no one is born bad. Maybe some people are just born into some kind of silence, shame, and chaos that doesn't give them much room to be anything else. And well, what matters now is what she does with it. And Tracy is clearly doing some work, changing lives, one at a time.
I want to give people outside the lifestyle some insight into lifestyle planning. I want parents to think about what their kids really get hurt to. For them, let this be an education eye-opener.
And just like Tracy, other girls found themselves walking similar paths, shaped by the same streets, but with stories entirely their own. Let's dive into them.
So I'm just on my way now. I've had a call about a place in South London that is almost like a safe house for the community, including gang members.
2017. In a powerful BBC investigation, journalist Livy Haydock stepped into a safe house for women caught in gang life. And what she found wasn't what most people would expect when they think of gangs. There were no hardened criminals or fearless fighters, just women and girls, some barely more than kids, trying to survive a world that had failed them from the start. These weren't just gang members. They were girls trapped in a system where family, loyalty, and violence were all tangled up, until it became almost impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. According to studies, there are about 250 criminal street gangs in London alone, and around 6,000 girls and women in the UK are believed to be involved in gang life. Experts say the real number is likely much higher. None of the girls Livy met looked dangerous nor acted tough, and the longer they spoke, the clearer it became that these weren't just stories about bad choices. These were girls who had run out of choices before they even knew they had any. One of them was Becky. She'd been in gang life for over a decade.
So what sort of things do you guys do?
Drugs, sell drugs, bag it up, pickups, drop-offs, robberies, fighting, violence, everything.
She came from one of London's most feared gangs, and you could hear it in her voice. Not the tough act, but the exhaustion. The way someone sounds when they've seen too much, too young, for too long. For Becky, being a girl in a gang wasn't just dangerous, it was dehumanizing. She spoke openly about how girls are used, passed around, and thrown away like they don't matter.
It's mainly things when it comes to girls. And every girl wants to be in with somebody, so they're willing to do certain things.
But she didn't spend much time talking about what happened to her. What she came back to over and over was loss. Now, she's lost more than 30 friends and loved ones. Some were stabbed, while others were shot.
This one was targeted, this one was for somebody.
Oh my God, is that a bullet hole?
Yeah. Wow. Retaliation, it's all retaliation.
One of them, a boy she cared about like her little brother, was gunned down on Valentine's Day. Becky took Livy to his memorial, a familiar sight in these neighborhoods, with flowers, photos, and graffiti, a shrine that shouldn't have had to exist. She stood there quietly, like someone who'd visited too many graves, and stopped expecting closure. When Livy asked why she stayed, Becky didn't get defensive, and she didn't dramatize it either. She just explained that for most girls, the gang is the only family they've got. And for those girls who've never had safety or structure, sometimes even danger feels like stability, just because it's the only thing that stays.
I was getting told every day by elders, come, you can stay with me, I'll look after you, you don't need social services, they're just gonna your life.
Then there was Callie. Her story starts earlier. She came to the UK alone, placed in foster care at 12, and she had no family, no home, just rules, new faces, and a whole lot of silence. Then she met him, an older boy who made her feel seen for the first time, made her feel like she mattered. He was part of a gang, and before long, she was pulled in too. But before she could belong, she had to prove herself. At 13, Callie did things no girl should ever have to do, things that she still can't talk about without her voice breaking. One of them was forcing her own friend to do horrific things for money, all to impress people she thought might protect her.
They said I had a choice of who I got to kidnap. So I kidnapped my friend. I made her do. things for money.
But Callie was arrested and charged with kidnapping and sexual assault. She was sentenced to 3 years and 18 months. Now, Callie wasn't hardened nor remorseless. She was ashamed and still somehow trying to make sense of it all. Like Becky, she told Livy that the gang had been the only family she'd ever known. And in her heart, all she really wanted was to feel like she belonged somewhere to anyone.
I done horrible things. Horrible things. I never had a choice.
Why didn't you have a choice?
Being in a gang, yeah, it's like they're a family. That's all I wanted at the end of the day, was to be a part of them.
And that's how it happens. How good kids do terrible things. Gang life doesn't always come crashing in. Sometimes it's a slow pull. And by the time they realize what they've become a part of, it's already too late. They're not just victims anymore. They've crossed the line. And now they're perpetrators as well. At first glance, they might make you pause with their facial tattoos, gang patches, and that unreadable hardness in their eyes. But when journalist Indira Stewart sat down with 4 women from New Zealand's most notorious gangs in 2023, all of them mothers, what she uncovered wasn't aggression. It was something much quieter: mistrust, grief, survival, and a fierce love for the only families they've ever known. But before we get into their stories, it helps to understand where they came from. The mongrel mob, also known as the Mighty Mongrel Mob, or simply the Mob, is New Zealand's largest and most widely recognized organized crime group. Their main rival is the Black Power Gang, another one with its own chapters in history. But the feud between the two runs deep, and it's been playing out for decades, behind prison walls, on city streets, and in the lives of families caught in the middle. What started in the 60s as small, scattered groups of young men in Wellington and Hawke's Bay grew into this powerful, deeply rooted network. Over the years, chapters formed across the country, each with their own leaders, their own rules, and their way of doing things. By the 2000s, the mob was expanding beyond New Zealand, first into Australia, then by 2018 into Canada. Today, there are over 30 active chapters, including one just for women. So when we talk about the women in this story, we're not talking about girlfriends on the sidelines or characters in someone else's narrative. These women are a part of it. They've lived it, and they've shaped it. And the truth of who they are and why they stay isn't nearly as simple as it may seem from the outside.
Is literally the reason why I'm still here. If I wasn't wearing this, I wouldn't be here.
One of them is Tia Loketi Harvey, or just Tia. She's 26. Her face is almost completely covered in ink. Waine, the Maori word for woman, stretches across her forehead, and Toa, meaning warrior, is tattooed on her chin, and beneath her cheekbone is the number 13, marking her 13-month internship in the gang. Now, Tia's been through some things that most people could never imagine, which include abuse, torture, and assault at the hands of a 35-year-old gang member.
I don't want to be attractive. I hope you look at me and think I'm ugly because I don't want to be touched again.
Still, she stays, and when asked why, she's honest. According to her, not all the chapters of the mongrel mob are the same. The chapter she's with is now different. They've given her something no one else has: safety, belonging, healing, and even a mother figure. She said,
"What I've seen from the mongrel mob kingdom in Waini Toa is love. I've been nurtured. I've been heard. I found a mom that truly loves me."
Wahina Toa, the women's chapter of the mob, was founded by Paula Ormsby, one of the few senior female leaders in the gang world. Paula doesn't hide from the past, but she believes that women like her are here to rewrite their stories that were stolen from them.
Have you ever thought of leaving Mongrel Mob?
Never. They're my people.
Paula's not alone. There's Matilda Kahotea, whose 3 sons lead a chapter of the Headhunters in North Shore.
Would you rather your sons were not in gangs?
I'm okay with the choices they're making.
And Claire Timothy, who's married to a Black Power president in South Auckland.
Today I've married a Black Power, you know, but to me he's not Black Power, he's my husband, he's my man.
Each of them have walked a different path, but all of them carry the weight of what gang life has cost them, and oddly, what it's given in return. Some of their stories are pretty hard to hear, full of abuse, rape, and loss, while others would speak of protection, loyalty, and healing through community. They don't pretend gangs are good, but they also say that's not the whole picture. Paula said,
"We're mothers, we're grandmothers, we're sisters, we're aunties. We have jobs, we work, we sit on trusts, and we're contributing members to society."
Still, one question always lingers. Why do they stay? Paula answers it plainly.
Where would they go? What support do they really have?
Paula shared a story that one of her girls actually called a police minister to ask for help on leaving a gang, but they ignored her. Official statements, however, say support is available. But for women like Paula, support looks different when you've never had it in the first place. Paula added,
"Even when we're reaching out, there was nobody reaching back."
And besides, sometimes there's simply nowhere else to go. For many women in the gang, this life isn't just a phase. It's their only home, their only family. Paula said,
"We're 4 and 5 generations into mongrel mob now in this country, and my babies themselves know nothing more than mongrel mob to be this beautiful one now that is loving and caring and nurturing and safe."
Of course, nothing excuses the violence or undoes the harm the gang and its influence have caused others, but it does help explain why walking away isn't always so simple, and why healing for these women might not look the way we expect it to. And in the end, they're not asking for pity, they're just asking to be seen.
Our women need to reassert who they are, retell our stories that were stolen from us, that were silenced.
I hear like a boom, 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 boom. Mind you, I live on the second floor, so I look outside my window and I see like smoke.
2023, Christina Negra Cruz sits down with Johnny Mitchell on the Connect podcast, a show that dives deep into the world of drugs, crime, and prison. She did not hold back. For the first time, Christina told her full story of how she went from a girl in East LA to a federal inmate in a sweeping RICO case, and what came after. 1982. Christina's born to young parents who had crossed the border from Nayarit, Mexico, chasing a better life. They settle in northeast Los Angeles, in a neighborhood near Glassell Park, an area that by the 90s had become a hub for gang activity. Christina grows up surrounded by it. Her aunt had 7 sons, all of them involved in a local gang. To Christina, they weren't dangerous. They were cool, protective, and most importantly, they were family. And so she didn't see a gang. She saw belonging.
I always thought it was cool, like, to be a gang member.
Then came the moment that changed everything. A drive-by shooting. Christina watched it unfold right in front of her, but instead of scaring her away from that life, it drew her in even deeper. By 7th grade, she's already dressing like them, talking like them, and moving in their circles. When her official initiation came, Christina was jumped in by 2 older girls and became a member of the Avenues, a well-known Mexican-American gang in LA. And around the same time, she would start using meth. That was the beginning of a slow unraveling. Christina was constantly getting into trouble. She was expelled, transferred, and suspended multiple times. Her first brush with the law would come when she was just 15. One night, she and a friend are hanging out with 2 guys when they spotted a pizza delivery driver. They come up with a plan on the spot, fake having a gun, rob him, and take his car.
We got a bag and we're like, give us your money and the car.
Oh, you pretended like you had a gun.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't, and then she got on the driver's side and I got on the passenger side.
It didn't go as planned. Moments later, cops are swarming the area. Choppers light up the sky. And after a short chase, Christina and her friends give up. The officers couldn't believe the crew they were chasing were just a bunch of kids. Still, they were arrested and sent to juvie detention for a month. But juvie wouldn't straighten her out. If anything, it just made her harder. Christina breaks probation over and over. She ends up back inside for months at a time. And every time she gets out, she goes straight back to the gang and to meth. Her mom noticed the change before anything else. Her daughter, the bright, funny girl she used to know, was slipping away, and Christina didn't care.
She's seen me that I'm just like deteriorating, like just she's losing me. You know, I'm in and out of jail, literally in and out of jail. She would see my skin and like tell me like, hey, you're not okay.
At 18, she meets a guy who had just gotten out of prison. They fall into a toxic rhythm, getting high, committing robberies, running from everything, until Christina found out she was pregnant.
Then I get pregnant, and I stopped using drugs. From that minute I found out I was pregnant.
For a moment, she stopped. She moves back in with her mom, gets clean, and even goes to beauty school and tries to make something better for her son. But the peace didn't last for long. Eventually, Christina left again, this time for Vegas. She gets back to the drugs and falls back into her old habits. She stays with her son's father for a while, but when that relationship falls apart, she returns to LA. Only now, things are different. Her mom had moved out, and she had no help, no money, and a son to raise. So Christina Christina goes back to what she knew: the gang, the drugs, and the streets. What she didn't know, though, was that the authorities were watching. Not just LAPD, but the DEA and ATF would get in to build a case. Christina was already on probation, and she got stopped more than once with drugs in her car. But somehow, she never got arrested. She was only given tickets and warnings, all while, unbeknownst to her, the case against her was growing quietly in the background.
For a whole month, I got pulled over almost every single day.
June 2008. The consequences finally catch up with Christina, and there's no outrunning them this time. Christina had been partying all night. It was about 4 a.m., and she was crashing on the couch when she sees something outside. The streets had filled up with agents in tactical gear. Within minutes, they're at her door, and just like that, it's over.
So when they were raiding my house, they were raiding like 70 other people's houses.
At the same time.
Maybe not 70 people, but there was 75 people in my case.
Christine is being swept up in this massive RICO indictment, one of more than 70 people arrested that morning. It was federal now, and bigger than anything she could have imagined. She eventually takes a plea deal and was given 5 years in prison plus 5 years of probation. Prison was hard, but it was also the reset she didn't know she needed. Christina enrolls in a drug program and gets clean. She started looking forward, and when she finally got out, she stayed that way.
Well, I found out who Christina is. I didn't know who I was. I've been on drugs since I was like 13 years old. So I didn't even know who this person was.
Today, Christina's not just surviving, she's building something new. She's reconnected with her son and started her own business. And now you can find her on a podcast called Indicted TV, where she invites people to share their own prison stories, not just about what happened, but about how life can go on afterward.
Shark, or you're gonna be I know that if it gets down to you or me, it's not gonna be me, I'll tell you that.
December 2019. A woman named Hazel sits down in front of a camera on Soft White Underbelly, a YouTube channel created by photographer Mark Leda. His platform is dedicated to giving voice to people most of the world ignores, and Hazel was one of them. Her face was calm, steady, but the story she told was anything but easy. She didn't give out her last name. She couldn't. She was still active in gang life. But in this interview, Hazel gives a piece of herself away, piece most people wouldn't even have the courage to share. Hazel didn't grow up on the streets. She had both parents right at home, but home didn't feel safe. Her dad was in the picture, but rarely present, as he was too lost in his drinking to really show up. Her mom was often high on drugs and was already tied into gang life. That connection is still there, all these years later. By the time Hazel turned 14, she was done. She turns to the streets and finds the Mecho Tracy gang. Or maybe they found her. Either way, like most of the women we talked about, Hazel finally felt something close to family. The gang gave her what her home never could: protection, belonging, and people who didn't walk away. And in the beginning, she would try to stay true to herself, but eventually, you don't stay soft in a world built on survival.
I'm not a dumb person. I know right from wrong, and I know, like, morally, like, my beliefs and what I stand for. So, like, but when it comes to my head, like, that's like family, you know?
Hazel ended up serving 3 prison sentences, one for armed robbery, another for home invasion, and a third for grand theft auto. But she admits that there were worse things she had done that never caught up to her. But she doesn't say that proudly. She says it plainly, like someone who has accepted the life they live.
I guess nobody ever says that, you know, like, that's something they want to grow up doing. It's just, stuff happens, you know, life happens, and for gang members like us, it's not a choice.
Hazel says the gang world is like a shark tank. If you're not the shark, you're getting eaten. Simple as that. Hazel learned early on how to shut her feelings down, how to act first, and how to become the kind of person you need to be to make it to the next day. That lesson was literally kicked into her when she was jumped in by 2 older girls and boys for her initiation. That was just to earn her place, and somehow this wouldn't scare her off, because according to her, for all the violence and chaos, the gang had rules. Twisted rules, sure, but still, rules. In their world, hurting kids was where they drew the line. The same went for prison, as anyone who crossed that line didn't last long inside.
Is a female gang member treated differently than male?
They are, a lot. Now it's more like we have to be as good.
Over time, Hazel stopped reacting to the violence. Watching someone get beaten or shot didn't shake her anymore. She compared this to being a soldier, seeing too much, and just goes numb because they have to.
It's sad when, like, you can see things like that and it's normal to you. It doesn't it doesn't affect you the way more.
But life had shifted again when she became a mom. Now, she didn't leave the gang. That wasn't really on the table. But she did start pulling back, and her crew gave her the space to do that. She doesn't run like she used to, and doesn't jump at every call, because now there's someone waiting for her at home. Someone who gives her a reason to think twice. Hazel admits that she used to lash out, sometimes for no reason. A bad mood for her was enough to light a fire, and she's done things that she doesn't talk about. But she's not full of regret. You see, in the end, Hazel really isn't asking to be forgiven, and she's not trying to be saved. She just wants people to understand that some kids grow up in places where loyalty is survival, and walking away isn't always an option.
I knew what I signed up when I signed up for it, you know? I wanted all this. This is, like, I thrive for that stuff. It's like a person that's addicted to drugs.
She does admit she's still figuring it out, still in it, and still fighting to be more than what the world expects of her. And maybe just by speaking up.
I don't believe in my heart that I could ever kill nobody's mother. But then again, I do.
1979. It's a quiet afternoon out here in Compton, California, when 16-year-old Sylvia Nunn hears the sound of gunfire just outside her house. She runs toward the park, heart pounding, and finds a crowd gathered. In the center was her brother, Marcus, lying in a pool of blood. He'd been walking his girlfriend to the bus stop when a car full of Crips drove by and shot him in the back. That moment changed everything. You see, around that time, Sylvia was already involved in gang life, but only on the sidelines. Now, after that day, she dives in headfirst and becomes one of the most feared female gang members Compton had ever seen.
He was just letting her bleed. I was saying, Marcus, Marcus. And I got mad. I was hurt. I was bitter. I was ready to shoot you. I was ready to kill you.
June 9th, 1962. Sylvia Marie Nunn is born into a hard-working, middle-class African-American family. Her parents moved to Compton in the late 50s, before the streets became known for gangs. Now, her father, William Willie Nunn, was a professional boxer. He taught Sylvia how to fight and how to shoot, lessons that at that time felt like bonding. Later, they became survival tools. 1973. Everything turned upside down. Willie's convicted of drug possession and sent to prison. Without him, the family starts to unravel. And by the mid-70s, gang warfare was taking over Compton, and kids across the city are being pulled in. Sylvia's older brother, Marcus, joins the Looters Park Pyro, a subset of the Bloods, and quickly climbs the ranks. They called him China Dog, and Sylvia looked up to him and wanted to prove that she was just as tough. So when her brother's crew asked her to help rob a gas station, she didn't hesitate. She cleaned out the register, handed over the cash, and demanded her cut. And just like that, she's in.
It was like, damn, this is a crazy little girl. Like, yeah, right. We'll buy you a popsicle or some candy. I say, no, the you want, you gonna give me some money. And they gave me some change. They gave me a whole bunch of change.
From that point on, the Nunn family wasn't just in the neighborhood. They were part of it. Their home became the unofficial HQ for the Bloods and a target for every Crip in the area. But Sylvia wasn't scared of the Crips. She wasn't even scared of the police. Oh, she earned the nickname Rambo after she attacked an officer whom she felt had disrespected her mother.
The police is telling my mother, I know you know with your son that you might as well tell us because we gonna claim when we see him, and I took off on a police. Bam, you don't talk to my mother like that.
She wasn't trying to make a name for herself, but she did, and everyone knew it. And so, when Marcus was shot in 1979, Sylvia was consumed with rage. She takes her father's gun, gets into a car with her brother's friends, and heads deep into Crip territory. When they found the crew responsible, they opened fire into the crowd.
If you shot my brother, I could kill your mother. If you shot my sister, I could kill your mom and your daddy. If you shot my nephew or my niece, I could kill your whole family.
Then the 1980s hit Compton hard. Crack cocaine flooded the streets, and violence hit a new level. Families broke down, and the role of women in gangs started to change. Before, many would join because of ties to boyfriends or brothers, but now, women are running their own operations, motivated by fast cash and easy access to drugs. Sylvia was no exception.
I was gangster. Fight at the snap of the finger.
By the end of the decade, the number of female gang members in Compton had exploded, but so had the consequences. April 1991, Sylvia stopped by police on her way home from the store. They had a warrant to arrest her, and they wanted her to cooperate.
He said, now check this out. Either you finna go to jail for that warrant, Are you finna train my police for me?
She agreed, and in exchange for her help, she avoided prison time. She worked with the local police and would even reveal the inner workings of her gang, from your day-to-day drug operation to how things really ran on the inside. And after that, Sylvia tried to lay low, move on, but life had other plans for her. July 23rd, 1991. Just a few months later, Sylvia's phone rings. It's her mom. She sounds distraught, and for a second, Sylvia's fearing the worst. The Crips had managed to hurt Marcus again, but the news was worse. It was her oldest brother, Junior. He wasn't in a gang, never had been, but he was a nun, and back then, that's all it took. This guy was walking down a quiet street when a car pulls up, and he's targeted, shot right there in the back of the head, and just like that, he's gone.
I think they might have killed Junior. Probably, maybe for something I had done.
After Junior's murder, Sylvia changed. The fearless Rambo image faded, the anger turned inward, and her life started to spiral. She fell into addiction, numbing the grief in the only way she knew how. Then came 1993. Sylvia found out that her father, the man who taught her how to fight, the one who had left and then came back again, was sick. He was living in Las Vegas, and so she decided to leave Compton for good. She walks away from everything she knows and starts over. In Vegas, Sylvia finds love again. She marries a former sheriff, of all people, in 1995 and slowly begins to rebuild. She joins a church and keeps her past where it belonged, in the rear view. She never forgets what happened, but she stopped letting it define her. April 20th, 2010. Sylvia Nunn passed away. She was 47. Her life was violent, heartbreaking, chaotic, but also full of strength, resilience, and survival. She may not have gotten a storybook ending, but maybe she got something better, a second chance.
And you became the first female juvenile to get life in prison.
Yes.
And this was life in prison with no possibility of parole.
Yes.
1992. At just 15 years old, Jacqueline "Jackie" Montanes takes the life of two men and was given life in prison without parole. Over 30 years later, she's finally out. And in a recent interview with DJ Vlad, Jackie sat down and told the story most people never heard, the one behind the headlines. 1976. Jackie's born in Puerto Rico, but would grow up on the rough streets of Chicago. Violence wasn't just on the streets, it was at home. Her stepfather, a high-ranking Latin Kings member, was abusive in every way imaginable. He beat her, assaulted her, and introduced her to drugs before she even understood what they were.
It was a hush-hush thing. I mean, I think people started to notice it, but I think the beatings overrided it, so they was too busy watching the beatings.
By 1984, Jackie had already experienced more trauma than people had seen in a lifetime. At just 8 years old, she's using cocaine. At 10, she ODs. Child Protective Services step in. But as Jackie says, everyone was too scared of him to actually help, including her mother.
She was scared. He used to beat my mom as well. I guess she was in fear of her life leaving her.
When her mother finally found out what was happening, she was too afraid to confront her husband directly. Instead, she places Jackie into foster care. It didn't last. Within months, Jackie had run away and landed on the merciless streets of Chicago. Eventually, she joins the maniac Latin Disciples, the Latin Kings' biggest rival, and earns the nickname Loca D. She was 12. Now to get in, Jackie had to be jumped in, a brutal beating lasting about 3 minutes. They give her a choice: cover her face and get beaten longer, or leave it exposed and take the hits head on. Oh, she chose not to cover her face. Then came May 10th, 1992. Jackie's close friend, Ismael Mato Torres, was killed. He wasn't in a gang, just a little deaf boy from the neighborhood. But because he was friendly with the maniacs, the Latin Kings targeted him. He was waiting in Jackie's car for a ride to school when they shot him. And just like that, Jackie lost it.
And he kept beeping the horn, and I was talking to my folks. So by the time I went to turn around, car had pulled up and blew his brains out.
May 12th, just 2 days later, Jackie attends the shooter's bond hearing. She stared at him, burned his face into her memory, and walked out with one thing on her mind: revenge. That night, Jackie meets up with two other girls, Marilyn Malero and Madeline Mendoza. Together, they come up with a plan. They find a gun and agree to kill the man who killed Mato, but things didn't go exactly as planned. When they get to Latin Kings territory, two men, Hector Reyes and James Cruz, invited the girls to a party at the park. Jackie recognized Hector immediately. He was the shoot her, and suddenly the girls felt that they had their chance handed out to them. They play along, laugh, and pretend that they're not out for blood. Later, when Jackie slips away to the bathroom, Hector follows her and tries assaulting her, but Jackie's faster. She pulls the gun and shoots him dead. Outside, James Cruz heard the shot. He turned, confused, and reached for his gun, but Jackie pulled hers first again, and just like that, he was gone too.
What goes through your head as you're looking at this dead body?
Nothing. Nothing. This is something that this is something that I've seen my whole life.
A few days later, the girls are bragging about what happened. One of them told the wrong person, someone who later got arrested and decided to spill everything to avoid jail. Jackie, unaware, was already making plans to leave for Puerto Rico, but before she could go, she attended Mato's funeral. The police were waiting for her outside. August 5th, 1993. Jackie's convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. She was the first female juvenile in Chicago to receive that sentence. A few years later, she's offered a retrial and a chance at 25 years. She refused. Jackie was still too young and too proud for her own good. Looking back, she admits that it was a mistake. If she had taken that chance, she knew she would have been out much sooner. Eventually, the U.S. Supreme Court rules it unconstitutional to sentence minors to life without parole, and so Jackie's sentence was reduced to 71 years. Finally, she had a shot at freedom. Looking back at her time in prison, Jackie says that it was anything but easy. She admitted she had to make a shiv on her first day and had to use it more than once. The violence didn't stop inside, but over time, something in her shifted. Her mom had died while she was locked up, and that nearly broke her, making her want to change.
I wanted to do things that my mother always wanted me to do, and I was determined to do that. So in order for me to do that, I had to learn how to feel. I had to learn how to care. I had to learn how to love.
After 16 years behind bars, Jackie earned her GED and became a certified dog groomer. She would make peace with her past and with herself. By 2022, finally, after 31 years in prison, Jackie was finally released. But the outside world hasn't been easy. She's working 2 jobs just to stay afloat, and most people still look at her and see only one thing: a convicted murderer. But Jackie's trying. She's in counseling, learning how to forgive herself. She's also married to a woman she deeply loves, and she's proud to say that she's learning how to live again.
I took 2 lives, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to save another.